install here of our electric windlass. Probably about 30 minutes. After lunch we should up anchor. So it would always pull up the anchor, but when I went to put it down, it would click like this. One of the first things I noticed was oil on the anchor chain, and it would get into the water when I would anchor. I didn't know where it was coming from, but you can see this seal on the bottom of the gear case is broken. This is kind of the strip down once I got everything off the boat and into the shop. The gearbox has tons of corrosion. The deck plate, the bearing, and the seal is totally destroyed and rusted out. All of these things are, what caused the issue for sure. First thing, just taking the deck plate pieces out, the gasket, all of the bits of the bearing came out, which you can see there. And then I removed the cone from the shaft using two C-clamps and a wrench and a torch. This is the gasket from the underside that was already loose and had leaked oil. This is the gasket coming off of where the motor attaches. All these Allen screws were super corroded inside. They're stainless going into an aluminum casting, so they're in really bad shape, two of them. And then trying to get this two halves separated, I ended up breaking that heavily corroded flange that was on the top. I was able to actually find one in stock in Spain, which it came within a week, which was incredible. Finally got the two halves apart. You can see it dripped a bunch of oil. What's inside is a mixture of salt water and the oil that was left in there. So all of the bearings inside were totally seized and totally destroyed. This is actually a little piece of the deck and the wood that I mounted the windlass on originally in Grenada, and I've been using it for years, pounding on things like this, and it worked well again here. Just got this thing cleaned up a little bit. In order to get it apart, I used two C-clamps and then the little circlip pliers to pull the circlip off. And then once I got it all cleaned up, you can see all the different parts here, and you can actually see what was happening. This thing rotates in one direction with the pressure of that spring, but if the chain is piled up in the locker and it gives any resistance, it'll just click like that. I think my issue was more about these bearings that were totally destroyed on both ends, and it just was not rotating freely, so it was clicking like that. Now trying to get these broken bolts out. One of the sides I was able to get just what was sticking through there with some penetrating oil and these vice grips, and I was able to get it out. The other one I was not so lucky. This video is sped up. This is at least an hour of me drilling and using easy outs and drilling and using different easy outs, and I ended up just having to use a angle grinder to I essentially cut the whole thing off. And then that's the little piece of screw that came out. My plan was to just tap in a little bit deeper and use a bigger screw to put it all back together. I got new bearings. All the bearings are standard. They're not special in any way. They're cheap. You can find them online. First thing first was I focused on the top half. So the deck plate side going back together again. That's a little gasket that goes on the deck plate. Keeps it all dry down below. The circlip goes on either side of the bearing. That's the circlip that fits in the deck plate that keeps the bearing in place. And then to get the bearing on, I used the gypsy and pounded it down, and then got the next circlip on top. And then I use the torch to make the casting hot. I put that whole shaft and the bearing in the freezer to make it cold. And then I was able to just pound that thing in. There's that circlip that goes and holds the bearing down. And then once that's in, there's that lip seal that goes over the whole thing. And you grease it up a little bit. You grease these cones up too, just as like a regular maintenance thing. You're supposed to grease those things. Also, you know, what probably happened was I had it too tight. It's probably best practice to keep that loose so that it can slip if it meets too much resistance. This is the worm screw. It connects to the one side. This is where the motor is going to connect. There's a blind bearing at the bottom, which was in good shape. This bearing also was in good shape, so I just reused both of those, put a new circlip in, and that all went back together, and then put the new seal in there, all from that maintenance kit. Again, warmed up the casting, and from the freezer got the bearing. Got it off. This one actually just fell right in, which is kind of nice. And then putting it all back together again. I used the vise on one side and C-clamp on the other. And compressed it to where I could then see the groove that the circlip was meant to go in, which you can see right there. This process was a little nerve-wracking. You know, if it slipped off, that it would shoot that washer. So, you know, be careful not to put your face in front of that thing when you're working on it. Is under a lot of pressure. And that part is together like it should be. And then seating that into the bearing. Gasket's already in there in the bottom. Just kind of able to knock it in the rest of the way by hitting the casting. And then just having that gear up against a piece of wood. That's the lip seal on the flange part, the new part that I replaced. And that lip seal comes in the maintenance kit as well. I used a bearing to just give it a little pound in there. And then same, we got the cold bearing, the warm casting, pounding that in. This one didn't go as easily. I ended up using the C-clamp to press it in a little more. Block of wood to finish the job. Greased everything. It calls for 0.2 liters of 90 weight oil. I just pretty much eyeballed it and filled it up to where that gear was covered. Spun it around a little bit and make sure everything was spinning nicely. The screws, these Allen head machine screws come with the maintenance kit. I put a little bit of anti-corrosion stuff on there. I also put some on all the gaskets when I'm putting that together again. That sat in there kind of nice. Gave it a few taps. Got all the screws back in, and yeah, put the two parts back together, wired it back up, and it worked great. So yeah, there wasn't a lot on the internet about how to do this and how to use this maintenance kit. As much as I've used YouTube to help me figure stuff out, I figured I owed the community a video on how I did this. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped.